So now we're going to look at some advanced Cue stack options. And the first one we're going to take a look at is playback holdover mode. What this allows us to do is enable a two-page holdover so that we can have playbacks active from 2 pages at once. So the example I'm going to use here is my wash tilt cue. If I was to bring this fader up and go to the next page, by default this playback is going to start flashing to tell me it's active on the previous page and needs to be deactivated before I can activate the playback on this new page. So I'd need to bring the fader down and then back up again to deactivate the cue from the previous page and then activate it on the new page. So I want to have those both active at once. So I need to go to Setup, View Settings, Playback, and set Playback Holdover mode here to 2-page holdover. If I now activate this wash tilt cue, go to the next page, you can see this time on the playback legend I've got P1, so page 1, wash tilt, so telling me what's active on the previous page, what is being held over. So now I can bring the fader level down and back up to set the level of this beam tilt cue on this current page. And we've now got playbacks active on 2 pages at once. If I want to release any held over playbacks, I can hold down Alt and press release. And this just releases any held over playbacks. So I've still got that beam tilt cue active from this current page, but the wash tilt from the previous page has been released. So that's 2-page holdover. And now we're going to have a look at playback priority. So playback priority, you can set different priorities for different playbacks. So I can have the priority of one playback above the other, so that if I've got the same fixtures on the different playbacks, I can set the priority so that one will take higher priority over the other. What I can also do, which I'm going to show you now, is set priority over the programmer. So by default in MagicQ, the programmer takes priority over the playbacks. I'm going to set it so that the playbacks have higher priority than the programmer. So at the moment, if I go back to page 1, we've got this spot static cue here, where I've got my spots in blue. By default, if I was to go and select those spots and locate them in the programmer, maybe set a color, all that information is going to take priority over what's on the playback. But if I triple tap the S key or the legend for this playback and go to playback priority here under the advanced tab, if I set this to above programmer and then reactivate the playback for this to take effect, so currently playback is inactive, you can just see the data outputting from the programmer. Bring this playback up and you can now see that this playback is taking priority over the programmer, so it's switched to that position and that blue color that's on that playback. It's now outputting that data from the playback instead of from the programmer. So that's playback priority. Final thing we're going to take a look at is fader jumps to cue step. So what this does is, if I just clear the programmer here, on playback 10 here, I've got some spot cues. If I activate this playback, I can step through these cues currently, because it's set to cue timer, I can step through them using the play key. What I want to do is to be able to step through those cues in even jumps as I lift the playback fader. So I'm going to triple tap the S key or playback legend to bring up the options, go to the fader tab and set fader jumps to cue step to yes. What I'm also going to do, I'm also going to set another option here. I'm going to set fader controls HTP channels, so your dimmer channels, to no. The reason I'm doing that is I want my intensity to jump on as soon as I start lifting the playback fader so that we can easily see the effect of this fader jumps to cue step option. So as I start to lift the playback fader now, my intensity is going to come on and it's going to move to that first cue, and as I lift the fader up in even jumps, it's going to go through each of the cues in that cue stack, like so. So that's the fader jumps to cue step option. And that's a few Cue stack options that are really useful through the use of MagicQ. In the next video, we're going to look at advanced effects.